Hi everybody! So, over the weekend I went to the charity shops because we have furniture charity shops here, and I came across this for a fiver. It's a 1970s bedside table, and unless you're into retro, to my eye, pretty gross. So, and I looked at it and thought, okay, it's only a fiver, solid wood, what can we do with it? And of course, as you know, I'm being completely anal at the moment about heating devices and heating the person and not the place. And we talked about this in a previous video, and we talked about something called the Dutch stove. So what I'm thinking of doing with this is turning it into a Dutch stove. Because a lot of the time, some of these projects, I mean, you know, they're old baked bean cans, and they look a bit ropey, and who wants a lot of trash around their living room? So if you can make something kind of nice, I thought it might get a bit of use. So, let's take this apart a little bit, sew it up in the Dutch stove shape. Dutch stove shape. So I've just taken the legs off and then obviously take the drawers out. Saw through here and here, and you get your footstool. So that's going to be the basics of the footstool, the stove. What we need to do is drill a whole load of air holes in here because we're going to make the air warm and let the air holes out. Now we're going to use a bit of heat, so it's not going to be huge. I mean, you're not talking about hundreds of degrees, you know, you're talking about a few degrees. So this stuff that it was made of would probably do just fine, but I'm going to use this because I've got it. This is a piece of kiln tile. So this can, well, this will take up to 1600 degrees. It's a bit of overkill. You could certainly use a lump of concrete if you wanted, like a garden tile, or a lump of stone, or a lump of slate, something that you think is going to be attractive. You can use just the drawer if you want, but I want something a little more solid, a little more attractive, and I happen to have this. If you want to get yourself a paving slab and chop that up, go for it. Okay, stone cutting blade. Health and safety, try not to cut your leg off. We're going to cut this section off. Okay, so I've taken a drawer front, added a hinge, and that makes a nice door. I've also moved the handle to here because I think it looks better. And the hinge is a strap hinge. I like the oldie worldy look of it, and of course you can see I've drilled the holes in there. Only other thing I've done is put this cross brace in to give it a bit of strength. That is the outer case of the Dutch stove, foot warmer, bottom warmer, wherever you want, finished. So now of course what we have to do is we have to make the heating element. As I said before, I'm going to use this massive bit of stone that I've got, and it goes on the drawer runner like that. So we'll turn that into a heating element in a minute, and then that will be the bit that we get hot. Now, there are 1,000 ways of doing something like that, okay? Because this is a Dutch oven, so the outer case is what it needs to be. We need some way of having a heat source in the centre there. And that heat source used to be burning embers. They'd put a tin tray in there and put some burning embers in there, and I guess if you want to, you could do that. But of course we've been making heating elements, so a carbon fibre heating element that you just laid across there would equally do a fantastic job. Now my mate KRX2 did something brilliant. He took some pecans, filled them through with sand and carbon, stuck a copper pipe in the middle and got a heat battery out of it. I thought that was awesome actually, so equally you could do that. So there's loads of ways of providing that heat source. Then of course what you do is sit it down somewhere, pop your feet on this and blanket on your legs, and hey presto. What we're going to do is we're going to turn this lump of stone into its own heating element. Now to turn this into a heating element, and you can do it with stone or slate or this, which is a kind of clay, glass works really nicely, we have this stuff, which is our own conductive ink. We make this and sell it on the shop, but I have done videos on how to make your own conductive ink. There are other people who sell conductive inks. You can use carbon felt, carbon fibre, it's such a range of choices. I'm going to use this because we've got it, and I'm told it's really, really awesome. It is in fact a graphene-based ink. Anyway, we've got our conductive ink. I've got some slug tape, which is basically copper tape, and some masking tape. What we do is run a couple of strips of the slug tape, mask it out. So I put the slug tape down, masked off an area, and now I can paint it with our ink and let it dry. Okay, when you've done, that's what you get. So this is our heating element and thermal mass all in one. Now, resistance here is about 10 ohms. It took me 3 layers of our ink to do it. Now 10 ohms, if I put that in with the 24 volt supply, then it's going to draw about 2.5 amps. So it's not going to get ridiculously hot. You're about to put your feet on it. So the chances are you don't want it to get ridiculously hot. Now a lot of people have asked questions about heat control and heat control circuits, and they're very good questions. A lot of the time, of course, I just let it be limited by its own voltage, because that's actually a reasonable way of doing it in certain circumstances. For instance, your kettle, and that has no heat control. Your toaster, it's just the same. It's because the heat that's given out is actually pretty much stable for the energy that's taken in, and so doesn't need any control. I mean, the whole point of a kettle is to boil the water as quickly as possible, and of course it can't get more than 100 degrees centigrade unless you boil your kettle away. So there's no heat control apart from voltage control in things like kettles and toasters, but of course that's not acceptable a lot of the time, and you want some kind of temperature cutoff, or maybe you want to vary the temperature. There's quite a bit to it, so I thought I'd do a separate video on heat control circuits and how to use heat control circuits with the various heat things that you might be making and what would be appropriate to what. So we just slide our heating element stoke thermal store in there, close the door. That's our Dutch oven done. Let's give it a little bit of power and see what happens. Okay, so 24 volts, it's drawing 2.5 amps like I said, and it would do because that's the resistance on it, and it's got a temperature of 26 degrees centigrade. Now that heat is being given out at a rate. It's being given out at the same rate that the energy has been supplied. So it's going to stay round about 26 degrees centigrade or so. Of course, if I chuck a blanket on there and put my feet on there, the heat won't be given out quite as quickly. And so it will rise a little bit to sort of 30, 32, which is plenty. And you don't really want much more than that. You're going to put blisters on your feet. So that is going to keep you nice and warm and toasty. And 24 volts, we can get a power brick for that. And that is an example of where we're controlling the temperature through voltage and through the way the temperature's given out in balance with the way the energy is in. And that's a perfectly fine approach to some of these things. If it's getting a bit warm, you need a lower voltage. You can just turn the voltage down. Well, you can on a power supply like this, or maybe swap it for a lower power supply like a 12 volt. But we will do another video on power supplies and on heating circuits and how to control them for those who want a bit more peace of mind than just sticking it straight on a DC supply. But there is our Dutch oven, and I think quite a nice piece of furniture that cost me £5. Put it under a desk, put your feet on it, stick a blanket on it, you're going to be as warm as toast. And at 2.5 amps and 24 volts, of course, that means it's about, what is that? 24, 48, 50, 60 watts. It's a 60 watt heater. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. And please do remember to like and subscribe.